This is Real Sports Talk, Rumack and the Greek, featuring Billy the Greek and Stormin Norman Rumack, brought to you by the good people at Cosa and Carpets for Life.
Hey everybody, how are you? Glad you're tuning us in, whether live or later in the week, whenever it is. We're very grateful for it, and we're very grateful that we have great sponsors like Cosa, Horse Racing Association of Ontario, and Nicky, the king of carpets, and my good buddy Billy is back after being off a week, being under the weather with a flu. Alex Campbell did a great job joining us, as he always does. So thanks again to Alex. And Billy, I take it you look happy. I take it you're feeling a lot better too.
I wouldn't go that far, man. But you know what? You miss 1 week fine, and I was watching a little replay of our friend Alex Campbell. So I better get healthy quick, man, or I'll be out of work. I'll be out of work within another couple of weeks if I let that kid take control. Awesome job by him, and then the two of you put together. I watched for as long as I could because obviously you talk a lot, right? And I wanted more to listen to Alex. But yeah, you guys did a great job. But it's also good to be back. I appreciate the time that I get to spend with you and the people that are watching.
All right, excellent. All right, so we got a whole lot we can go at. You know, I was mentioning just before we got rolling here is like, you know, I just clicked on just randomly the NHL All-Star stuff, and I saw, you know, was it 5 or 6 guys golfing with what looked like a little plastic frisbee or a plastic disc. I said, I mean, I watched for 5 minutes, and I was like, come on. Like, once the NHL All-Star game is going to circus routines, you know what? Just get back to, you know, I don't know, borrow from baseball, have East against West or Western Conference East or whatever the hell, and then make it for home advantage in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Because otherwise, it's like even, you know, the other skills it's getting a little bit tired. Okay, fastest shot. Well, everyone's shooting up around 90 to 100, so it's like, okay, very nice. And then the 3-on-3s. And then with the NFL, I mean, I understand why, but once it gets to flag football, I mean, who watches that? Flag football. It's like, I played flag football when I was like 20 or whatever. It's like, what's the point? Anyway, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I just see no reason to tune into that stuff. I know the All-Star game is going to be in Toronto, but even if I can get a ticket, it's like, other than the game, is like, I don't know, who would really care?
Well, you're talking to somebody that absolutely doesn't give a rat's ass about watching it. It wouldn't take 2-3 minutes of my time, and even if it took a couple of minutes of my time, and you know it's pretty valuable what it is that I do. I'd rather watch HLN and watch 24 hours of murders, 24 hours a day. And once I get bored there, I'd rather watch Frasier, a little bit of Cheers, a little bit of Rules of Engagement. I kind of like that, even though there's too many sexual overtones on the show. I'm not comfortable, but you know what I'm getting at. The point is, it's just painful to watch. And here's the thing: it makes us. Look at this. Look at these people calling. Hey, pal, I'm on air, man. I'm on air. What do you want? What do you want to say hi to the people? It's 7 o'clock. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Forgot to send me the link.
Okay, well, find it. Look at this guy, the heavy hitter, wanting to pipe right in there, man, on live TV. So here's what I reminisce, man. I reminisce Campbell's versus Wales. I reminisce AFC versus NFC Pro Bowls. I reminisce the good old days in terms of, especially in terms of professional hockey, especially in terms of the Pro Bowl, which has never been high on the radar in terms of viewership. So what do you do, Norm? What's the question? You know what you got to do? It's simple. It's simple. You get some sponsors, you get a boatload of cash, man, because you want to get entertainment. You got to give the players incentive. You get a boatload of cash. Half of it goes into the winning team's pockets. Everybody loves cash, Rumack. You love cash. These guys love cash. You put half the money in your pocket, half the money to charity, and the losing side goes home with a goose egg, and they got to pay for their flights home, and they got to pay for their dinner, and they got to pay for their golf, and they got to pay for everything out of pocket. You got to put something. You got to bring something to the table. And again, what we see now is it's a sad microcosm of where the world of sports has gone. It's terrible. Just terrible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, quite frankly, other than, you know, keeping sponsors happy, I don't think these All-Star games, okay, I'll set aside the baseball All-Star game, at least, you know, I still think that has something to it. But that aside, even the NBA, like, the slam dunk thing, and that was good in the Vince days and for a few more years afterward. But everything's getting like tired and repeated. I don't know if like honestly, I'd like to know what the fan viewership is across all these all-star games, and probably baseball gets good viewership because they got no competition the second week in July, like nothing else is on, right? The NFL is just starting their training camps, everything else. So probably baseball, because there's nothing else on that night, gets a good viewership, right? And the home run derby is still exciting. But other than that, I just wonder if the league would be better scrapping it. Just give the league a week off for the players.
No. You don't scrap. You create incentive. Like sports, even regular season, it's reality TV. So how do you get people invested? And like I told you before, and I say it again, the best way to get people invested is give them something worth their time, and that comes down to cold hard cash. Instead of putting the sponsorship money, you put the sponsorship money in the winning team's pockets, man, and you'll see a prime time effort by both clubs. And it's always best when you have a competition of that kind. For me, it's always best when you have, like, for example, hockey, Canada versus the world, or North America versus the world, or how the World Baseball Classic even operates. And that's to bring some national pride to the table and separate the players in that kind of way. Because regardless, when you do that, right, you create some kind of interest that goes beyond the game. And if it's just a game itself, like, it's just really unfortunate. And it's really, who watches that hockey game? You got hockey guys with like these idiots. You got hockey, and I tuned in, I don't know, for about 5 minutes, and I'm watching hockey guys with hockey sticks on a golf course hitting golf balls. I don't know, like, you tell me, man, how any human being can find this fascinating.
Well, it was a joke, and even it's golf balls, and they had plastic discs that looked like they were supposed to be like pucks. It's like, come on! That's like having a PGA event and they're playing with hockey sticks. Yeah, okay. The golfing fanatics are really going to enjoy that, as a gimmick for whatever, a tune-up to the PGA or the Masters, or like, you don't need it. It's like just a waste of time. But like you say, if you have an incentive, I don't know, maybe the hockey thing. I'm sure they've tried it at some point. I just don't recall. I think with something at stake, maybe it's money. Like, how about, Europeans versus North Americans? At least there's some kind of rivalry there and some kind of excitement, at least for the players there would be, right? But again, you have to have, but what's the piece of the pie you get for the winning side? And I don't know if it's divided by.
Here's what you do, man. Here's what you do. You play for game checks, period. You play. Anybody that gets invited to the All-Star game, they put up a week of their salary, man. You put up a week of your salary, right? And the NHL matches that. And if you lose, your money goes to charity. It goes to some kind of cause. That's it. There's some sacrifice. You want to see how a guy will play. You want to see it. Just try to go into Norm Rumack's pockets and try to swipe a 20 out of his pockets, and you'll see how feisty he gets. And if Norm Rumack's like that, professional athlete's no different. Now, will they go for it? Players Association, probably not. But that's the point. You gotta have some kind of investment. You gotta have some kind of financial investment for the guys that are there. And if you can accomplish that, or have some kind of meaning to the schedule, like for a long time, baseball World Series predicated an All-Star game, or do something that makes the game matter, or else, just scrap it entirely. Just scrap it entirely. Give everybody a week off, right? And just don't even bother, because right now, like, you've seen a half a full arena in Florida, another disgrace. And it's just something that just really, it's a sign of the times, man. And that's sporting circa 2023, man. Campbell's versus Norris. Remember those times?
Absolutely.
You're young enough to remember those times.
Actually, I'm young enough, pardon the expression, to remember when the Stanley Cup winner, including your Toronto Maple Leafs, the 16 format was the Stanley Cup winner would play against NHL. And you know what? There were even a few fights back then because there were grudges against the Stanley Cup winner. So sometimes you'd even see a scrap. It wasn't such a bad idea. Everybody wanted to take down the Stanley Cup winner, right? No matter who it was.
Which again is another great idea, Norm. And again, sometimes sometimes, like, as we move forward, we'd like to go back in time and anything. And I'm talking about any kind of idea. We've brought about 5, 6 to the table. We're not going to belabor the point here and bore my buddy Marty Roberts. I'm going to tell Marty Roberts why the Blue Jays are in trouble this year, but we'll get to that in a bit. I'm not going to belabor the point. You got to do something, anything, man. And now we're watching NFL football and we're watching a 20-yard field with flag football, man. What else? What else can you bring to? What else can you bring to the table, man? Entertain us. What else, man? It's just really a sad turn of events.
Well, okay. Well, I'm sure most people watching probably agree with us on that. It's kind of run its course, come up with something new and exciting, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so I'm just curious, Billy, because the last time we were on, you poured your guts out about the Cowboys and especially Cowboys and the playoff games to that point in time. So, of course, now we have a Super Bowl. I think it'll be a pretty great game. I'll even say, Bill, you're the wagering man, but I don't know what the spread is, but I'll say right now I favor Kansas City by a field goal. Does that sound reasonable?
You're in the ballpark. The line's Kansas City at 1.5. And again, for a guy like me, and we're talking about a true Cowboy fan, true sports, I don't give a rat's ass. I might not even watch. When my Dallas Cowboys go down, and they've been going down before the times, right, every year since 1995, I'm turned off. I don't watch football. My coffee doesn't taste the same. My cigarettes are not the same. The steak and fries is not the same. And it's not the same for a good, honest to God, it's not the same for a good month, man. And this happens to me only with the Dallas Cowboys. I'm a big Blue Jay fan, right? But give me 4 or 5 days, I'll snap out of it. The Leafs, the same. Give me about a week, I'll snap out of it. But when a Cowboy loss comes with a lot of pain, man, and it comes to pain that's really and frankly, I might not even watch the Super Bowl, and if I do, it'll be with one eye and probably for 10-15 minutes. From a football perspective, though, Philadelphia's obviously shown the ability to play a physical brand of football at both lines of scrimmage, and for me, that's where the game's going to be won and lost. Can Philadelphia protect their quarterback, and can they run the football? If so, it's going to be a long day for Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City. But again, the NFL, especially in the last probably 10-15 years, has put together good productions in terms of the Super Bowl and some great games. You remember when we were a little bit younger and you said the NFL was terrible and the Super Bowls were a collection of blowouts? That hasn't been the case for a long time. So look for some good theater. And if I'm one of those guys out there betting like my buddy Nick, you know what? I might put a small little teaser on an overtime game. It's been a while since a Super Bowl went to overtime, and I think one of these is ripe for the picking, tied at 27 going into overtime on Sunday, 6:30 from Arizona.
Just a question I want to throw your way about the Eagles. Compared to how you felt about Jalen Hurts the first couple of weeks, first month when the Eagles got off to a fast start, have you changed your evaluation of Jalen Hurts now that he and his club are in the Super Bowl?
No, I have not changed my evaluation of Hurts, and I'll tell you exactly why. That, in my estimation, he's yet to win a football game on his back. He's yet to be able to show me that he can throw for 300 yards. He can drop back in the pocket. Philadelphia is a well-rounded club of 52 guys. They don't win either because of Hurts or in spite of him. He's just part of a machine there, right? Whereas Patrick Mahomes does not have a big game. It's hard for Kansas City to win. Philadelphia can win on Jalen Hurts going 13 for 20 with 145 yards passing and about 60 on the ground. They can still win. Whereas Kansas City, if Mahomes puts up those numbers, you're pretty well guaranteed a loss. That's the difference.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask you one other NFL-related question. So,
make it a good one, man. I'm still not 100%, man. I don't have that much oxygen left before I have to light up a cigarette. We got the Costa Classic waiting too, so hurry up.
Well, I know this will get your blood oxygenated quickly. So, a couple of weeks have gone by since your Cowboys were ousted in less than spectacular fashion. So, now you've kind of had a chance to cool your jets, or you're a little bit distanced from it. Have you changed your feelings at all from, I don't mean in terms of the language, but in terms of your feelings about
start swearing again, man? It's been 2 weeks. I just calmed down, man. Do you want me to start dropping F-bombs again? Where do you want to take me? Back to that dark place?
No. I'm not telling you if you want to. Go ahead. No, but I'm just saying it's like sometimes, when I know When I'm watching a Chelsea game, I get pissed off with what I saw. Sometimes a few days later, I've cooled my heels a little bit, and I get a different, or I read some insights, from the locker room or whatever, gain some other information. So I'm just curious if your perspective on the Cowboys has been altered at all since 2 weeks ago.
No, actually, as a matter of fact, I'm more sickened 2 weeks later as we replay the divisional round game against San Francisco. As you see how the Philadelphia Eagles manhandled Purdy, they manhandled that San Francisco team, and then you watch a Dallas Cowboy team led by Dakota Prescott. They can't move the football, they can't win at the line of scrimmage, and can't separate out wide. And it's just again, when you have a quarterback of Dak Prescott's capabilities, and he's exactly like in Dallas, he's exactly like Mahomes. That you can't expect Dak Prescott to throw 2 interceptions and play a subpar game and for Dallas to win. It just doesn't work that way. Dallas wins when they play clean offense, when they run the football, and when Dak doesn't make mistakes. So if you go into the biggest game of the year, the number one thing you can't do, Norm, you cannot do, man. You cannot do. And this is what Philadelphia is really good at. They protect that football. When's the last time Hurts had a ball picked off? You'd have to go back, but you have to go back weeks. When's the last time you saw Hurts get strip sacked? You'd have to go back weeks. Philadelphia protects the football, right? They protect the football and win at the line of scrimmage. And Dak Prescott, over the course of the last, probably the whole season, has not protected the football. And in games where the margins are razor thin, when you're going into Candlestick and you're playing San Francisco on the road, you cannot make no mistakes. You cannot make no mistakes to win that football game, right? And where do the mistakes come from? They come from the guy that's being paid the most money on the team, and they come from the guy that's supposed to be the best player on the team. And the best player on the team, once again this year, was second fiddle to a guy named Brock Purdy, man. And that's where the problems lie in Dallas. You can look at it and slice it any way you want. But when Dak Prescott doesn't play clean football, Dallas is susceptible to lose. And when Dak Prescott plays clean football, as we saw in Tampa Bay, even though they're 2 different levels of opponents, Dallas wins. It's that simple. And it's all on Dak Prescott moving forward. He doesn't inspire the confidence in me. He's never inspired the confidence in me as a guy that I can pin my hopes on. And again, here's the problem. The Dallas Cowboy Nation and Dallas Cowboy fans are stuck with this guy for the next 2 years. Cap hits, everything else. And for some goddamn reason, Jerry Jones loves him, man. And again, I want to like him, but at the same point in time, I like him. He does something, and then he breaks my heart. I forgive him. He breaks my heart again. Enough's enough, man. You can't keep putting Cowboys on this emotional roller coaster. What we want is consistency, man. And Dak Prescott has not shown that. Anyways, what else we want to get? What else we want to get to? Obviously, 16 days to spring training, Norm. I'm pretty excited about the baseball season, not only from a professional perspective, but the East York Bulldogs are starting to put plans in place for another junior season over at Stan Wadlow. We'll get into a little bit of Leaf talk, but before we do so, Jim Iliopoulos, let's catch this week's COSA Classic and a couple words from our good friend Nikki Porsche at Carpets for Life.
And they're off of the Dan Patch and fast out for the lead. Booze cruising as expected. Sprints up and takes the lead. Booze cruising. The early pace center. Attaboy Art comes away well in second. Radar installed. And then a gapping Western Shore is fourth. Artistic Fella looks to drop in line 5 there. Inside 6th, Juan the West. Angling in 7th, Bono Bests. Inside racing 8th as they round the first turn. Artist's View. Then comes Ben Superman and P.S. I Love You Heartbreaker, the early trailer. 26 seconds flat as they step to the quarter. On the front with the lead, it's Booze Cruisin'. Booze Cruisin' by 2. Attaboy Art to the inside sits the pocket with Radar installed. Next in third, Western Shore and Jameson waiting patiently here fourth. Looking to flush cover 5 now, Artistic Fella. There to the inside in 6th is Juan the West, followed closely by Bono Bests. They come to the half in 54-4. The field begins to tighten up now as they race onto the far turn. Booze Cruisin' on the front from the outset. Attaboy Art is still there in second. Now to the outside, Western Shore getting underway from 4th, now 3rd. And right there on his back is Artistic Fella. To the inside, Radar installed is blocked in 5th. They round the turn, coming to three quarters, and Booze Cruising bracing for the assault now. Western Shore looming large on the outside. Attaboy Art to the inside. They hit three quarters in 1:23. They're on their way home. Booze Cruising to the outside and challenging Western Shore. Attaboy Art looking for room. Artistic Fella looks to rally on the outside. And Bono Bests with late pace here. Less than an eighth of a mile to go. Booze Cruising to the outside. Artistic Fella forging up. And here comes Juan the West from the outside. Juan the West and Grismore. Juan the West will win the Dan Patch in 150 flat.
By now, you know the name COSA TV, an industry leader producing unique, high-quality digital content promoting harness racing in Ontario. Features, virtual programming, live events, and more. COSA TV has it covered. Follow our social media channels and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page to view the latest content. And if you're looking to bet your favorite Ontario track, check out hpibet.com. COSA TV, taking Ontario racing global.
Welcome to Carpets for Life. For over 30 years, we have been servicing both residential and commercial clients in the sales and installation of custom stair runners on wall-to-wall areas. Our team prides itself in honesty with a regard of professionalism and customer satisfaction. Our many testimonials and continuous referrals is a testament of the quality of workmanship we provide. We strive to ensure a happy customer is a Carpets for Life customer.
All right. Thanks to our good buddy Nikki, King of Carpets, and of course COSA, Standardbred Horse Racing Association of Ontario, loyal sponsors through all kinds of ups and downs and goods and bads and in between. So nothing like loyalty. You know, it's hard to find in this world, and they certainly are loyal to our show with Billy and I, as we're back. All right. So Billy, you'll pardon me, but since the baseball winter meetings, I haven't gone out of my way exactly to go day to day to the MLB site. So at least as we edge closer, of course, not that far away from spring training, have your feelings about the Blue Jays changed at all? Because, of course, we talked about the end of the season, the baseball playoffs, especially the way they went down to Seattle. Got to fix that bullpen. What's your feeling about going into spring training now with the Blue Jays?
You're such a, you know what, you look at it, and again, I'm surprised it hasn't received a lot of coverage in terms of print media and social media. What you saw this offseason, man, really, if you think about it, was a racial cleansing, really. Like what you saw was a certain segment of the club, the barrio, you know, the Spanish town down at the end of the dugout, get cleaned out. Really, that's what you saw. You saw the exodus of Lourdes Gurriel, Teoscar Hernandez, Gabriel Marino, right? And what you didn't see, and again, I'm sick and tired of this because there's a lot of people, especially I don't want to typecast and I don't want to lump people in a similar group, but there's a certain segment of Toronto baseball population that's over 40 and white and has a bad time with people having fun in the dugout. Lourdes Gurriel, Teoscar Hernandez, every time you saw these guys, they're having fun in the dugout, shits and giggles and what have you. And for some reason, that rubs people the wrong way. Like these guys don't care or they don't want to play or they don't want to be serious. So what the Blue Jays got in the offseason was a little more white, a little more professional. And are they better on paper? I don't know. I would say not.
All right, but just
hold on. Hold on. And here's the biggest thing, man. Here's the biggest thing. The changes were made in one part of the club dynamic, man. Less Latinos on the club. But here's the issue. You want to blame Hernandez for game 2 of the playoffs against Seattle? 2 home runs in the biggest game of the year. What's the one thing that let the Blue Jays down? The bullpen. And you didn't properly address it. You got a guy in Swanson that's hit or miss, low 90s fastball with a curveball. Guys like that are a dime a dozen. You brought in Chad Green from the Yankees. He's not going to be ready till maybe probably August, if that, right? And you're telling me you got better, but you didn't get better. Every single guy on your bullpen, except for Jordan Romano, on a championship club is a low leverage guy. So you didn't change the tenor of your bullpen. You didn't get better in the one area, but what you did get better at is cleansing some Latinos off the club, right? I don't know how that's going to rub Vladimir Guerrero when he's looking to restructure a deal moving forward. You got rid of Gabriel Moreno, the consensus top 3 prospect in all of baseball, and you brought me a guy in Dalton Varsho that's a 230 hitter. You brought me a guy like Kevin Kiermaier that is an equal 220 hitter, doesn't stay healthy, and then you brought me in who else, right? And then you decide you're going to be able to make the offense of Gurriel and Hernandez by those 2 guys just because they hit from the left side. I'm not sold. This could be a train wreck, Rumack, because here's the one thing the Blue Jays haven't accounted for, and the Blue Jays can't sustain: an injury to George Springer, Kiermaier coming off a bad hip. We got other guys with injury problems along in terms of their starting 9, and you've fallen in love with Alejandro Kirk, who's a walking knee injury waiting to happen, and you jettison Moreno to Arizona. So for me, no, I'm not impressed. You haven't done better. And as a matter of fact, what you did is you took a little bit of life out of the team, and you brought in a business-like approach. How's that going to translate on the field? I don't know. You tell me. You people tell me. I don't know. Are you happy with Kevin Kiermaier taking 500 at-bats from Teoscar Hernandez? Does that make you happy? Does that make you think you're better? I
don't really get happy or sad by their transactions. I mean, I'm willing to let the season unfold and see what happens. But let me have, you don't mind. I mean, aside from the fact that you're right. I mean, the players they moved are of Hispanic origin. But I think, like, considering, obviously, Vladdy is still the heart and soul of the team. So why would you use a term like, or the analogy that you said, racial cleanse? It's like, okay, they happen to be of Hispanic descent, but why?
You know what? I'll say it because other people are scared to. There was a certain segment of the dugout that's gone, man. That's gone. How else do you explain it? What else you want to talk about? Wasn't necessarily traded because of their baseball acumen or their baseball abilities. Every time the dugout pans out, it shows these guys having a good time. It shows Lourdes with his flamboyant hair. It shows Teoscar having a good time. And it shows 7, 8 Latin guys at the end of the Blue Jay dugout all the time. That's what it shows. And the Blue Jays obviously did not consider that environment conducive to winning baseball games because they broke it up. Why else would you break it up for? And here's the interesting thing. If you had half a bullpen last year, you would have beat Seattle. Who knows how far you would have gone? And we would have looked at these guys like legends, right? So for me, it's simple. You addressed a part of the club that wasn't the issue, man. The issue was the bullpen. The issue was not Teoscar Hernandez, I'm sorry. The issue was not Lourdes Gurriel, despite their defensive lapses and the fact that both of them have not shown to be the headsiest of ball players at times. They were not the problem, Norm. The problem was you had guys like Anthony Bass, Yimi Garcia, Tim Meza, and whoever else, a list of guys coming out the bullpen that gave 6 runs against Seattle in 3 innings, and you lost your season. You didn't lose it because of the barrio. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree. They were at the fault, and I think I was under the impression most people agreed. Their bullpen wasn't as good as Seattle's. And that cost them. But it's like, okay, so to the point about, they were having fun. They're kind of like life of the dugout. Maybe as you're pointing out, a little bit too happy in the midst of the game. But do you really feel that's why Blue Jay managers? Oh, we can't have guys like I see guys on other. Hang on. I see guys on other clubs kind of having a kibitz or a laugh in the middle of the game. Not the whole game, but in moments. So it's like, so what's the big – I don't see why that would be a big deal.
All right. Explain to me then. I agree with you wholeheartedly. So explain to me why a segment of the club is gone. Explain it to me then.
I would tell you the truth. I'd have to know from – considering we agree about the bullpen – I'd have to know from Blue Jay management, it's like, well, what's the rationale with those 3 in particular in terms of trying to get the pieces that they needed? I don't know, but I've never heard of on every team in every pro sports, you got guys who are kind of like, the pranksters, the jokesters, maybe, in a quiet moment in a game, they might have a laugh, not when you're getting pounded or something, or it's like you're trailing in a playoff game, right? There's a moment to be funny. There's a moment not to be, but I'm just saying, it's hard for me to fathom. It's like, Okay, because they have a laugh or two in the midst of the game. I see it just about every other baseball team.
All you want, man. I'm telling you, Norm. The majority, and you'd have to listen to Blue Jay fans. The majority of Blue Jay fans, really deep down, you know what they feel, really, and they won't say it because again, they felt the club was too Latino. It wasn't white enough. It wasn't serious enough, and it wasn't a professional ball player. It was more like young, immature guys. That's what they felt, man. Whether or not they would come out and say it. They wouldn't for the most part because you get in trouble nowadays if you speak in that fashion, right? And deservedly so. That was the issue. Because you cannot tell me everybody in Toronto, and again, people in Toronto don't know their ass from their face when it comes to baseball, the majority of them anyway. It's not a baseball town. So you explain to me how the Blue Jays, so you've got Kiermaier and Varsho, and you've lost Teoscar, Lourdes, and Moreno. How are you a better team on paper?
Okay, but let me go even further back. It's like you're talking about the Blue Jay fans. It's like, you know, you talk about the Blue Jays since their inception. I mean, just for example, two of the most beloved players in Blue Jay history for their talent and their passion for the team would be, you know, like, for example, Robbie Alomar and Tony Fernandez. It's like there's Hispanic through and through, right? How many guys are more loved than they were?
I'm not talking. Obviously, you're missing the point, Norm. I'm not telling you. You get this, Doug. I'm not telling you anything that's not supported by facts. When you look at where the Blue Jays adjusted, they decided that a clubhouse overhaul and a talent reconstruction were the two directions they wanted to go. So what were the two issues of the Toronto Blue Jays? A right-handed dominant hitting club and the fact the majority of their primetime guys are Latino ball players. Those are the two things they addressed. They addressed the clubhouse, the character at the end of the dugout, and the fact that they got some left-handed sticks coming in now to even out what was a predominantly right-handed lineup. But don't kid yourself. Without a doubt, part of the reason why these guys are gone is because that was the barrio in the dugout having too much fun, getting silly, this, that, the other, and they wanted to break it up. They wanted to bring baseball guys in here. And okay, again, I'm telling you that the baseball guys in here, you can bring whatever baseball guys you want. You can have any impression of Gurriel Hernandez you want. But unless you address the bullpen, nothing will change. You can have a million baseball guys. They brought in Don Mattingly. That wasn't coincidence, Norm. Believe me, I know what I'm talking about. You don't bring in a guy like that just by accident. That guy like that is also not only teaches the game, but also creates clubhouse culture and professionalism. That's why they brought him in. Pay attention to what I'm telling you, man. Right? Yep. So obviously they felt the clubhouse culture was not conducive to winning. And the characters that they felt were most egregious in the creation of that clubhouse culture are out the door. And they're out the door. And you know what? I'm telling Blue Jay fans, they were never the problem. The problem was that haphazard bullpen that you still haven't addressed, which will still be the Achilles heel moving forward. I don't care what kind of professionals you have. If you can't get outs in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning and lock down games where you should be winning, you're going to have a problem. And the Blue Jays are no better this year than they were last year when it comes to addressing the bullpen and issues of that kind. It'll be interesting theater to see. It'll be interesting to see how the club moves forward. But again, the biggest concern that I have is the back end of that bullpen. Period. Case closed.
Okay, but the point you were driving earlier was that the fans feel that way about the Hispanic nature. Well, that's why I was pointing to the fans. I'm not talking about the management. I'm saying the fans, you know, going back to the early Blue Jays, like I'd stand by it.
Okay. Hispanic or not, don't ever compare. When you're talking about guys like Tony Fernandez, you cannot make the comparison for Tony Fernandez to Lourdes Gurriel in terms of a professional ball player. You cannot put Roberto Alomar as a Hispanic in the same sense with Teoscar Hernandez. Two different things. Teo and Lourdes were part of a bigger problem according to the Blue Jay management, and that was the clubhouse cultivation and the clubhouse character. It was that simple, Norm. I'm not telling you that I disagree. I'm just telling you why it happened. Why else did it happen? Why are these guys gone and not somebody else? You tell me.
The point I was driving was you were saying, if I heard you correctly, that you think the fans feel that same way. Like, what makes you think the fans feel that same way about?
I just got a temperature. I got a temperature on a deeper level, and the fans, for the most part, especially old school, as I said, over 40-year-old guys, they don't like home run jackets. They don't like the celebration. They don't like a lot of things that the Blue Jay was coming out of the Blue Jay dugout in the back half of the regular season last year. They didn't like it, and for baseball traditionalists, they believe that style, that attitude, and that way is not championship level baseball. It's not professional baseball, and it's not conducive to winning. That's why they were happy Lourdes was out the door. That's why they were happy Teoscar's out the door, because they perceive guys like Kevin Kiermaier, Brandon Belt. They perceive guys of that nature to be old school ball players and to be able to be more professionals and bring a championship baseball to Toronto. It's that simple, man. It's that simple. But again, those are a certain segment of the population that's over a certain age and regales and reminisces on what baseball used to be, not what it is now, man. And we'll just leave it at that. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I don't talk out of my ass, man. I know what I'm talking about. And the majority of the people are happy. If you took a poll from baseball fans over, 40 years old, white guys, and you told them about the burial and the home run jacket, 80% of Blue Jay baseball fans will tell you that they wouldn't want the home run jacket. 80% of white guys over 40, man. And because you know what they are? They're traditionalists, and they want the game to remind them of a certain time in life, and that game's changed. If you Blue Jay fans had a problem with the home run jacket and the burial, you should have had a problem with the back end of your bullpen, because that was the issue. Not Teoscar, not the home run jacket, nothing like that was the issue. The reason why the Blue Jays didn't come with any hardware last year or didn't compete for a championship was the back end of the bullpen wasn't properly addressed at the trade deadline. It wasn't addressed during the offseason, and hopefully it'll be addressed at some point within this baseball season, because it's still not good enough to win. You understand? Nothing else to talk about here. Let's flip the channel, man, and talk a little bit about we want to go Leafs or Raptors. We got about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, hang on. So just one other point. Do you feel that the audience split with Blue Jay fans was the same? Would that have applied? And I think this is a good comparison. Do you think that applied to the Jose Bautista home run bat flip? Do you think that was
one of them was in the middle of a passion in the middle of a game, and the other is just a consistent and constant level of what appears to be immaturity. Like for a guy like me, and sometimes it's troubling. You see guys putting on home run jackets when they're down 8-1 in the ball game. Or you see a lot of laughing, you see a lot of stuff like that, and sometimes you don't understand what it's like to play 162 games, and sometimes we see people having a good time, and we automatically assume they're not competitors, or they're not in, they're not into the game, or they're not headsy ball players. Just because they're Latino and they're flamboyant, we automatically make assumptions of the men without knowing them and without spending a lot of time with them in those constraints. And obviously the Blue Jays and their brass knows these guys, and they've made the decision that these guys are not winning championship ball players, and they don't want to be reflective of the Blue Jays at large. That's why they're out the door. There's 3 Hispanic guys and they're out the door, and the one that's going to hurt you is Moreno, because he's going to be a generational catcher. You'll be looking for a guy like that in 5-10 years, where Kirk either eats his way out of the game or his knees fall flat and he's worthless behind the plate. Then you'll look for a day where you wish you had Gabriel Moreno back, who's going to be arguably one of the top 10 catchers for the next 20 years in Major League Baseball. Anyways, where else you want to go? You want to talk a little bit of Leafs before we get on?
Yeah, I mean,
Leafs or Raptors, where do you want to go?
Okay. Well, I mean, with the Raptors, I don't know. It's like, we had talked about this before. Is Masai Ujiri like time to pull the trigger on a blockbuster if you want to change the direction of the team? They've got some lovable players. They got some talent. Their bench is a disappointment. But, do you trade again? It comes back to the same point. Do you trade one of your heart and soul players to try and, move the team up the ladder? Because it's like, I think I could be wrong, Billy, but I think fans now are getting past like dining on the 2019 championship. It's sort of like, come on, like let's get going already, right? Or do you disagree?
There's 5 teams, Norm. There's 6 as of this evening at 25-30. There's only 6 teams in the NBA with a worse record than the Toronto Raptors. 6 teams. And they're also a game and a half out of the play-in spot that's currently occupied by the Chicago Bulls. So the question you ask yourself is, which direction do you want to go? at this point in time. And here's the complicated factor, because the Raptors' next 5 home games are against winnable opposition. They'll be favored in each game. So you run off 5 in a row, you're 30-30, probably in the 6, 7, or 8 spot, vying for a playoff spot and some meaningful basketball. Is that the direction you want to go? Is that or can you do both? And I'm from what I'm led to believe, that the Raptors are going to try to stay competitive and make some changes when necessary. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if a guy like Freddie VanVleet is out the door come trade deadline time. I think he's your biggest asset. I think, especially with Kyrie Irving going to the Dallas Mavericks, I think clubs like the Lakers, clubs like the Clippers would give you a decent package for a guy that can run point like Fred VanVleet. There's also guys like Anunoby that are available for trade. So what looks good to me is that you take a little piece of it away, and then you build back, and maybe you can still even vie for a playoff spot, even with trading a guy like VanVleet or a guy like Anunoby, if you get back some young guys that can play.
Yeah, I just kind of wonder, just to get into the playoffs. I know anything can happen. Maybe the Raptors could pull. I don't see them. I'm just talking about matchups. So I don't have the list in front. I'm just saying, I don't see them knocking off the Celtics or Milwaukee, for example. Or Philadelphia. It's just not in the cards as far as I'm concerned. So to me, I'd rather go with the blockbuster, and it's like, start building for next season already. Like, adding 2 or 3 playoff games, okay. It's going to be forgotten pretty quickly if you're going up against, I think, one of the heavyweights. I'm not saying they won't try hard.
Here's the problem if you're Masai. Obviously, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, and Boston are cut above the rest of the Eastern Conference. But when you look at it, there's not a head and shoulders juggernaut clubs in the NBA anywhere, despite Boston's record, despite Philadelphia's recent run of good play, which came obviously to an end at Madison Square Garden, losing by 10 last night. There's no juggernaut club. So I don't know if the Raptors make an addition with the 5 guys they have. Would you be shocked if they beat Philadelphia in a 7-game series? Would that be so out of the realm of possibility? Probably not. Here's the one thing that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention. All GMs, you know what they're looking for in these drafts and moving forward. They're looking for that first-round draft pick in a proposed trade that's going to turn into a lottery nugget and a game changer. Because if you're the Toronto Raptors, there's only one way that you can ever find a game-changing guy to put on a Toronto Raptor uniform, unless you see a guy come through free agency, and the next guy that comes through free agency to lead the Raptors would be the first, right? So the only way you're going to get a generational player in the NBA is in the lottery and in the draft, and that's what you got to resign yourself for. That's where you're going to find your next face of the franchise. You're not going to find him wearing another uniform.
Yeah, quite frankly, I haven't had any time to watch college hoops. I don't know, and then that's not even addressing European and international basketball. I don't know, or I haven't heard, if there is, at least speculatively, a franchise game-changing player in this draft. I just don't know.
There's 3 of them at the top of the draft that would be first-round picks in generation talents. You got a kid that handles the point at 7'4", compared to the likes of LeBron James. So obviously there's a big nugget at the draft this year, right? So again, do the chances increase if you tank are you guaranteed to get one of the top 3 picks? Absolutely not, right? We saw it, and it's all out of fortune. You saw. All it takes sometimes is ping pong balls to fall your way, right? We saw with the Maple Leafs with Austin Matthews. You got lucky, some ping pong balls fall your way. And sometimes that's what's going to happen if you're a franchise, because the one thing we know for certain, and again, I can't mention this enough, is there's no free agent in the prime of his career that's going to come to Toronto and save the Raptor franchise. If Giannis wasn't the one, then none of them will, right? None of them will. The only case you could have made for a guy like Giannis to come, big Greek community, stuff of that sort, and he stayed in Milwaukee. There's nobody coming here to sign for max money and put the Raptors on his back. You're not going to see Kevin Durant here. You're not going to see any superstars of that ilk come here and put the Raptors on the back. The Raptors are going to have to grow internally. They're going to grow through the draft and smart pickups, right? There's not – that Kawhi Leonard, Norm, was a once-in-a-lifetime situation that just happened to fall in our lap. Stuff like that, it doesn't happen like ordinarily, right?
Even with Kawhi, the stories emerged after, and good for him. He played his tail off. He played like a consummate professional. But the story goes that even when the Raptors were in that round against Philly, Kawhi was already planning. You're talking about going to the Clippers. I mean, LA is his home, to be fair to the man, so you can't blame him. But I'm just saying, goes right back to the infancy of the Raptors when they have, other than there's just a small few of recent vintage who would say, okay, well, DeMar DeRozan would have been happy to be a Raptor for life. Okay, but it's a pretty small number. But again, their biggest hero in their championship, their one champion, Kawhi, was basically out the door as soon as he came here. And again, not take away, he played his ass off and he did everything he could have asked for him, but he didn't want to be here on,
if you were brother grown up in California with flip-flops and sandals, man, I don't know. Would you want to go back home and play? Would you want to go back to the Staples and play for the Clippers, or would you want to be up here in Toronto minus 50 in January, man, with your having to spend money on Canada Goose jackets? It's obvious. So obviously got no problem with that. Just like when some Leaf players want to come back home, right? Yeah. They want to come back home because there's something familiar to them. So good for Kawhi. But the point is that you're not getting guys like that come to Toronto to play basketball on free agent contracts. And that's the unfortunate part. Now getting into the Leafs, obviously we're coming into the last third of the season. And again, coming off an All-Star break, Matthews out for another week or so. Do we really, as we close the show, do we have anything really to talk about when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs?
No, nothing. I haven't changed my mind since training camp. Is at this stage, after this group, they aren't exactly kids anymore. Marner and Matthews and Nylander, and obviously not Tavares. He's a seasoned vet, and Riley. So I'm just saying, it's no longer hiccups, and they're still learning. That's a load of BS. They're not still learning at this stage. That's why come April, whatever day it starts, the 9th, 10th, 11th, when the playoffs begin this year, even with injuries, because every team has injuries, there can't be any excuses. I don't care if they play Tampa, Boston, or the 70s Montreal Canadiens. I'm obviously exaggerating a bit. I'm just saying this year they have to get the business done because they've had 5 years of experience already. It's enough. Now, it's either show something or the club, including obviously the management people, as we talked about, the coach and Kyle Dubas, something's going to change in a hurry. It has to. It might be something
Is there any way, Norm? Is there any way you can envision another year of Dubas and Shanahan after a first-round loss?
Well, okay. Put it this way. If it was Tampa Bay or Boston, and it's a 7-game series, and every game goes to overtime or triple overtime, they'd say, well, okay, you might cut them some slack because it was that close. But I can't see if they go out in 7, and the Leafs have a couple of good games, and then the opponent has a couple of. It's just like one of those series. I think the fan base is going to say, you know what, enough's enough. You better do something for us. I can't see any other scenario, no matter who they play.
If you're Kyle Dubas at the trade deadline, are you active? Are you busy? Or what lengths would you go to improve your roster, Norm?
I haven't changed my mind. I think they got to trade. Obviously, I'm not talking about Marner and Matthews. So between Nylander and Tavares, if you want to take a gamble on what do we need to get out of that first round and improve our defense or give us more depth or even our goalkeeping, you've got to make a move and it's not just that one player. Probably have to trade off maybe a Marley or two and some of your draft picks. They have to go fishing this year, I think. Otherwise, they might suffer the same fate. I don't know if you agree.
It's difficult not to agree, actually, as a matter of fact, with you, Mark, because after all, when it comes to proficient and sound hockey minds in Southern Ontario, man, you don't take a backseat to anybody, Norm Rumack. You're a borderline Hall of Famer, for God's sakes, and what a pleasure it is for me just to get to listen and just to pick pearls of wisdom from you on a week in and week out basis. I think I'm a better man for it, Norm.
Well, okay.
You like that? Eh? You like that bullshit, eh? You look at you. You blushed and you thought that was the sweetest thing I ever said. Meanwhile, it's a crock of shit. Listen, you're old timer. Here's the problem, man. Here's the problem with the Toronto Maple Leafs. That you, unfortunately for me, first let me get to one of the pleasant surprises. One of the pleasant surprises for me has been the play of William Nylander. He's come under much criticism for me this year. I think the guy's played his best hockey of his life, and finally he gets to the point in time where who am the biggest William Nylander kind of detractor, would have a tough time trading him at this point in his career, right? He's played good hockey. Guys like Inval, they've played good hockey. Their record speaks for itself, right? And now the question is, what are you gonna do? How you gonna add to your roster, and how you gonna beat Tampa Bay in a best of 7 when you're starting Samsonov and they're starting Vasilevsky? When you're starting as your defenseman TJ Brody and they're starting Victor Hedman, man? How are you going to win that? How are you going to find the pieces necessary and the depth to beat Tampa Bay? And once you beat Tampa Bay, how in the blue hell are you going to find a way to beat the big bad Bruins? It's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle for the Toronto Maple Leafs to come out of the Eastern Conference, right? And again, for guys like us, if you couldn't get through the Canadian division, the Montreal Canadiens, to get to a Stanley Cup final, how in the blue hell are you going to beat Tampa Bay, Boston, and some combination of Washington, Pittsburgh, who knows who else you're going to have, Carolina, Rangers, Islanders even now. The Eastern Conference is loaded to bear, right? And again, a big piece of me thinks that ship's already sailed when it comes to the Leafs and their chances to advance in the Stanley Cup playoffs. If you didn't do it already, now you're going to start when all the teams are a little bit better. I don't know, man. Doubts are out, obviously. Doubts are out, and the doubts won't go away until the final whistle of the first round series is in the books, and the Leafs are shaking hands successfully, which again, is more than likely not to happen. But if you ask me after the trade deadline, and you pick up a guy like Ryan O'Reilly, you pick up another guy out of St. Louis, out of their back end, you address some of the issues along your third and fourth, then I don't know. Convince me, man. Convince me, right?
Yeah,
I'm not sold.
If I'm in Dubas' shoes, I couldn't give a rat's tail about next year, because if I get fired, it's somebody else's problem. So I'm putting all my marbles, all my dice, I'm shaking them on the roulette table. Let the next GM have to worry about what I did wrong. It's not going to be my problem if I don't get out of the first round. So if I'm Dubas, I'm throwing all my cards on the table at the trade deadline. He has to. Yeah. See if he does. And you said it perfectly, Norm, because it's not game one, but that's the first salvo when it comes to the playoffs, and who wins and loses is who won and lost at the trade deadline time. All we have to do is look back and see some of the acquisitions Tampa has made in years gone past, especially last year when you look at the acquisition of Nick Paul, a relative unknown. The Leafs got to be in on those guys. The Leafs got to acquire those guys. They can't continue to go to the opposition. You can't keep getting beat by players that were acquired by the other team's GM at the trade deadline. You got to be the guy that finds some diamonds in the rough and say, whoa, what a pickup. When's the last time you saw a Leaf say, whoa, what a pickup? And he changed the tenor of a series. You tried it in Foligno. He got hurt. You've tried it other times. You've never been successful in any kind of way. You've never helped your team get better at the trade deadline, even though you tried, right? So to me, what that is, to me, it's an issue of scouting, right? Pro scouting. I don't know what you're doing, but those guys that are getting paid to find hidden gems gotta earn their money, man. The way other GMs in Tampa Bay and in other parts of the world make money by finding guys to augment their rosters come trade deadline time. The Leafs haven't had that. They haven't had that. And you know what? You better find it this year, because you're going into a series again against Tampa Bay, and you're probably going to go in there again as the underdogs, man. So you better find a way to turn those tables quickly, because Norm Rumack's running out of patience. Isn't that right, Stormin Norman? I mean, I got a lot of patience, but I think Maple Leaf fans in general, I think the patience comes to an end April 15th. It's either, what they say, do your number or get off the pot. And that's it. It's like, I think management or ownership senses that. It's like, okay, they've had enough time. Kyle's contract is up, if I'm not mistaken, and he's got to produce. So if I'm Kyle, every ace I have in the hand is up for grabs other than Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. Everybody else, who would you like, and what are you giving us in return, and do they make us better? That's the only things he has to consider, and he better consider. Otherwise,
what's your gut tell you? What's your gut tell you on February 6, 2023? Do you have any kind of lean as to whether this is gonna end in pain again?
Well, I can just say if I'm in I don't know Dubas. I don't know how he operates internally, and quite frankly, he doesn't share a whole lot that you gain any perspective anyway. He says all the right things in very short sound bites, so I don't have a read on the guy. He's heavily stats oriented, and if he's heavily stats oriented, he better be focusing on what's happened to the Leafs, as you pointed out, when they had their best chance in that Canadian division against Montreal. Yeah, Montreal went to the finals, but the Leafs were still a better team, and they should have won that series. And, Carey Price, let's face it, carried them on their back. So if I'm Dubas, the only number I'm looking at, never mind plus, minus, and this, and how many this per game and how many that per game, just look at your playoff results, and that tells you there's something missing there, and you better find something. At least take a chance. At least, even if you lose your job, take a chance. People respect the fact that at least, okay, you try to do something to give them a better chance. Get a savvy veteran. I don't care, whoever. Like you said, some of the guys from St. Louis who won a cup. Get something that gives you a different chemistry and a different dynamic, and maybe makes the other team, your opponent, think twice. That's what he should be doing.
Before we get going, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. We've got our buddy Detlef, who always checks in, who watches the show religiously, good friend of the show. He's got a couple comments. Obviously, he's not a big fan. Year 8 of the 5-year Shanny plan. Obviously, heads will roll. But the question I got to ask you, as we close out an episode of Rumack and the Greek, the question I got to ask you: are you comfortable going in with Samsonov as your starting goaltender and some combination of Samsonov and Murray? Are you comfortable trying to win 16 games in the playoffs with those two guys in that?
Well, comfortable would be like, okay, that my response would be okay, but do I feel I've got a tandem who can win me the cup? I'd have to say no. No, I don't. I don't know if anybody feels differently, but no, I don't. And to be fair to them, I'd ask the question, do you feel, as much as those youngsters on the blue line have played well, do you feel that the blue line they have is of Stanley Cup winning caliber? No, I would have been more comfortable with the 92-93 Maple Leaf defensive core. A solid. We've always talked about them. They weren't like Hall of Famers, but they were a solid group. That's what
I couldn't disagree with you. Couldn't disagree with you whatsoever. Again, you've hit the nail on the head. And much like all Leaf fans, I think you know what, universally all Leaf fans are kind of in the same kind of place. They're pessimistic, and in 5-6 years of losing in the variety of fashions the Leafs have lost would create a level of pessimism for everybody involved. And again, you haven't gotten really better. You've played unbelievable hockey in the regular season. You have a 5-6 players, and you're going to go back into a round of playoffs again with a god-sized gorilla on your back trying to get out of a round. And again, who knows? Only time will tell, Norm. It's still too early to say. I think we'll get a better inclination on how the future looks after the trade deadline. And, I told you this, guys, about 3-4 months ago. That's the most important day of the year in terms of the regular season in Leaf hockey. What's this club going to look like coming home, right? And again, we'll get a better idea when that comes to fruition.
No, absolutely. That's going to tell the story, and that'll either change the feeling, or if nothing happens, it'll make the feeling worse for Leaf fans, feeling like, this doesn't feel too good going into the postseason with the same formula again. Well, maybe they'll. Anyway, we'll find out. All right, so that's
once again, we turned a 45-minute show into an hour, and we barely scratched the surface, man. Every time we get together, it's always a quality hour of back and forth, a little bit of, I find lately we're finding our groove together, man, and it just so happens, I believe that you finally came to the realization that I am probably one of the best sportscasters you've ever worked with, man, and it's about time you show me that respect and let me get a few words in periodically.
Well, I'll say this much for you. A, you know your stuff. And B, you're a real person. You speak like a real fan, which I think is to your credit. You know, I think a lot of fans.
What are you trying to say? That I'm not articulate? What are you trying to say? That I'm the? What are you trying to say? That I don't have a extensive vocabulary? Is that what you're trying to say? What are you trying to call me? A common man? A dum-dum?
I'm saying I think your street vocabulary works to your benefit because you know we've all been to the bar. Like more so when I was younger, I'd go to all those bars downtown where the hockey players used to hang out, and you know, and not necessarily all downtown. Some of them were midtown, and you know that's the way you talk is how real fans talk. After and it's like sometimes the players actually talk that way, or even more so. So yeah. It's like that's how people, even management people, talk with some of your vocabulary. So I think it's actually to your credit because I think a lot of fans relate to you that way. It's like, yeah, damn, that's how I felt after, you know, maybe not be the Cowboys, but whoever your favorite, you know, everybody has different favorite teams, right?
Hold on.
That's how I talk the same.
Hold on. Would you also say that I have a admirable delivery of multiple syllable words?
Oh yeah. Well, I taught you a couple, like exponential.
Yeah, man. Nauseating comes to mind. But anyways, we'll save that one. We'll save that one for next week. It was a pleasure again, Normie, spending this hour with you. It's a pleasure spending all the time I can with you. I'm glad I feel a little bit better. Thanks for those that tuned in, well wishes and what have you. I really appreciate you guys. Even though sometimes I don't answer my phone, I don't text back some of the guys that reach out to me, you know. Especially during February, it's a down month for me. I like to go into hiding a little bit, you know, grow out the hair, the belly, and everything else, man. As you see, I'm not tan. My eyebrows are not done. February's a tough month, but I'll be back in no time, man. Baseball's right around the corner. Rumack, it was a pleasure as always. On behalf of the good people at the Central Ontario Standardbred Association, our good friend, the King of Carpets, Nicky Borst, that's Stormin Rumack, with our producer Jordan Larache. Does an unbelievable job. I'm Billy the Greek. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you once again.
God bless. Thank you.